Hi, welcome back to another episode of Righteous Ruckus podcast. This is your host, Riley Lowe. That is me. And this week, I'm actually going to do something a little bit different. I was recently a guest on the Theologizing, easy for me to say, the Theologizing Subject. All right, with my friend Caleb Reese, brother in Christ. And I just wanted to, I was a guest on there, and he asked some really intriguing questions. And kind of some more insight, be able to give my listeners and my viewers some more insight into kind of where my theology comes from, where my beliefs stem from, that sort of thing. And I think it would be interesting for a lot of people, as you know, there's some people that know me personally that watch this podcast and listen to this podcast. There's others that don't. And I think it would be interesting to, especially those that don't, even those that do, though, maybe not know the full story, and just kind of give some background history into kind of where my beliefs stem from and kind of what my beliefs are. I talk about different subjects on my podcast and delve into different things, but I don't really expand upon, where those come from other than from the Bible. So, I just want to give kind of a peek behind the curtain as far as how those beliefs have come to be, and I hope you guys enjoy. And this is a little bit longer than my normal podcast, so and I'm not going to break it up into two sections. I'm just going to do it one section. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. Stick around to the end, and I'll also give a link to Caleb's podcast, the Theologizing Subject, and it's Caleb Reese is the host of that, and so I hope you guys enjoy it. And I also want to encourage you to go to his channel and check out his other interviews. He interviews everybody, from Catholics to whatever. Kind of he wants to delve into where people get their theology from. He wants to know that. And it's interesting to find out why people believe what they believe and where those beliefs stem from, right? So I encourage you to go check him out at the Theologizing Subject, Caleb Reese. So without further ado, we'll get into basically a replay of that podcast on this podcast, if that makes sense. So I hope you guys enjoy, and we'll see you at the next podcast.
It's time to get off the church benches and into the trenches. Let's make a righteous ruckus.
All right. Well, today we have Riley Lowe. I always have a hard time spelling your name.
A lot of people do.
Yeah. Riley Lowe on the podcast. He is the host of a podcast called Righteous Ruckus that he just started. So he's been putting out some good stuff. Been fun to listen to, fun to hear your story. But yeah, man, if you just wanted to start off by maybe just saying a little bit about you, your family, kind of your story and stuff. Maybe just start off like that.
Yeah. So, in full disclosure, I used to, in high school, in Deer Creek, Oklahoma, a little bitty town in north central Oklahoma. That's where I went to high school. That's where I guess I would say if somebody said, "What's your hometown?" I would probably say that that's my hometown. And anyway, I used to work for Max, for your dad, and so enjoyed that time. There was, went to Narden Church there. That was very formative. And we'd gone to church, quite a bit different churches, even different denominations throughout growing up. And that church was really kind of a really formative church for me, though. Really was finally, we were in one place. We moved around a lot growing up until I got into high school. So kind of got put in one spot there and really got to somewhat plant some roots. And that church was really formative with being small and kind of a tight-knit community, really helped set the foundation, that along with my family, of course. But and then I went off to college there in Tonkawa. Of course, what seemed like a huge school, at NOC there is actually a small school, but for me, it seemed huge. And man, I got in, did but before I went to college, I never would have thought I would do this typical college thing and get into partying and all that stuff. And I got sucked into it, and actually turned into like, oh, it's Riley's house, that's the party house, and I mean, I didn't never get like too crazy as far as like worldly scale of things, but it was crazy enough, and I really wasn't. I'd never given my life to the Lord up until that point. I knew what Christianity was. I knew what it was to be a Christian, but I'd never gotten to that point and actually given my life to the Lord. And actually, I had graduated there, started work, and ended up still partying and everything. And it was just kind of an empty lifestyle, just an empty lifestyle. And everywhere you looked, you think. Actually, there was one time I was sitting there, and I was at this club or whatever, and I was looking at these people, and I was like, there's probably a few hundred people here at this place, and there's thousands of people that live in this community around us that are doing not this, and I'm sure they're happy and living a life. So what are they doing, right? This is just a handful of people, but it seems like, oh, the thing to do, but it's not. And then I really got convicted. It was just, my life was just kind of, like I said, it was just empty, and it was headed downhill. And then I got to a point, I had an uncle who passed away, and I went to his funeral. And at that funeral, they presented a side of him. I was not really really tight knit with this guy, but there was presented the Christian side of him, talked about his faith, talked about what he did, and that really just, man, it hit home with me. And I was like, there would be people that if they went to my funeral would either say, there'd be half the people there would say, oh, Riley, he's a good kid, I remember Riley. And there'd be another half the people that would say, Riley knows how to party, man, he can live it up. Right? And I'm like, this is like a double life, and what do I want to do? I don't want to be, dead and have that kind of legacy or whatever, but it really convicted me, man. The Holy Spirit was really working on me, and shortly thereafter, and I was like, man, I actually drove out to just a peaceful area, and I was like, man, Lord, I give it all to you. This is not the life I want to live. I want to change things. I want to do different things, and there was evidence for it. I remember shortly thereafter, I went on a fishing trip with a bunch of guys from work, and we stopped by like a store on the way there, and they were like, hey, what beer you want, Riley? And I was like, no, I don't drink anymore. When did that happen? I was like, I'm not into that anymore. And I actually wasn't like, it's not like I was like, oh, well, this is what happened. This is how you come to Jesus. It was just, that was a change for me. And I wasn't even like trying to say, yeah, I'm a Christian now or anything. That was just evidence. Right. And so, go from there. And then within a year or two of that, really, starts the sanctification process right from there until I die. And I was a different man, not cussing, not partying, not doing any of that stuff. And met my wife, and that would have been in 2006. I got married to her, and then we waited like 10 years before we had kids. And now we got a couple beautiful daughters. I got a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. And man, it's, there's plenty of things between that area that I, getting married, and now that there was a wreck that happened that was life changing, and that happened in 2012, where I got hit on by a drunk driver. That really, it was a test. It really, looking back on it, it was a huge test. That I hope I passed. I think I passed. I hope I passed it. And, I guess I'll know if I hear, and then whenever I hear, well done, thy good and faithful servant, hopefully that, and, maybe I'll be able to see and meet some people that my testimony has impacted, and then another big thing here, recently within the last, what is that? This is October. So 10 months ago, I got diagnosed with cancer, and had that whole deal happen, and it was just only by the grace of God that through that too that I was able to get through that and get past it, cancer free now. Praise the Lord. But what looking back on these situations, for whenever I had that wreck for about 10 years, I was, afterwards you sit there like I was so close to God during that time because that's all I had. I had my family, I had friends, but the only thing that day in, day out that I was so close to God that I almost crave that a little bit. You know what I mean? I don't even know if that makes any sense, but to be in such dire straits to where it's like I should have died, and for 8 months it's like, am I ever going to walk again? Am I going to be able to do anything again? You're just faced with that reality, and like I said, man, thank goodness I had my faith in Jesus, because that's what helped me keep a positive attitude. That's what helped me keep me going, was relying solely almost on Jesus. And it just strengthened my faith so much. And then, there's no way that I would have come out of my shell, so to speak, to be able to even talk to people openly. Something that happened during that time was when that happened. I was like, look, if there's any way, God, that I can use this to glorify you, I'm just going to say yes. I'm just going to do it. And it was just kind of a promise to God and a promise to myself to do that. And actually shortly thereafter, the church that we were attending at the time was like, hey, we're going to do these video testimonies over some things, and your testimony would be really good. Would you like to do it? And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. Before that, I probably would have been like, no, just kind of shied back and not done anything. And then there's been so many things that happen. I'm not in the same profession now, and part of that's because I took a stand on some things that caused issues. And so, but each time that I go through those trials, you just get, I don't know if you want to say more confidence, or just almost like you just get used to it, right? It's just another hardship, another difficult time, difficult season that you're going through. And you can look back on those seasons that you've made it through and know that you're going to make it through, and come out. There's that saying, if God leads you to it, he's going to lead you through it. Well, so far that seems to be working.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, I'd heard a bunch of your videos on, you were talking about the cancer diagnosis, so I was curious to see how that was going. And but yeah, man, thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah.
And if you guys want to hear that more in depth, you can go check out Righteous Ruckus. Yeah, man, that's cool. That's awesome to see what people go through and what God brings them through, and just kind of where the hinge is that kind of causes them to swing back toward following Christ. And I love hearing that stuff. But yeah, sorry, I got some allergies going on, so
everybody does right now. It's fall in Oklahoma.
Yeah, we went camping and it was like, oh my gosh, the next 2 days were just terrible. But well, yeah, man. So I just kind of wanted to I'll just go with the next question. And again, not everyone is super like, yeah, identify with this tradition or that tradition, but is there a certain theological, tradition that you lean toward, or that you were brought up in, or has there been any change in that area or anything like that?
Yeah. So growing up, like I'm talking like really little, my parents, they went to a Baptist church actually here in Edmond where I live now. And like I said, moved around. I remember seemed like we mainly bounced between Baptist and Methodist as far as the churches that my family gravitated towards. And actually, of course, Narden Church, it was Methodist whenever attended there. And then my wife and I, when we first got married, there was a Methodist church right down the street that we started attending. I had actually been somewhat out of church for a while leading up to that point. And it was just part of that whole growing in the Lord, that was like, okay, we're going to go to church and we're going to start learning and everything. And we attended a Methodist church for a while. And there was some things that just kind of, there was just some glaring things that kind of transpired, that I mean, I can get into that.
By all
So
means.
yeah, so this was, man, it was a weird deal. So this church, it was, the congregation was older. And so we were like one of the only, there was just us and another like young couple there, right? So they were like, oh, we got young people, yay, you know? And I mean, that's cool and all. But, there were just some things like, man, I remember like one, they, of the Methodist churches, they were more, I don't know what you call them, like maybe leaning towards more, I don't even know what you want to call it. So like the pastor would wear the robe, and so it was a lot more. I don't know, would Orthodox be the term? I don't know, whatever the term
High
is.
church. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like really, yeah. And so like I remember one day that like the pastor, he gives this whole sermon like 30 minutes long on how he went fishing and this bird was on his shoulder and he thought that was so great. I mean, that was it. And I'm like, dude, that's just what happens when you go fishing, man. There's no application. I got nothing. I mean, everybody has an off day, right? Everybody has an off day. So yeah, sure. Whatever. Go for that. But it was just it was just kind of like that more often than not is what it kind of led into. I'm like, man, there's just nothing here, man. And it's almost like, people are coming here just to check the box that we went to church. And I think it's, I don't know, I haven't been there. So hopefully it's kind of changed and everything. I know they've changed pastors and stuff, but there was also this thing that happened where, so the Methodists, like the whole international Methodists, they had this meeting. I think it was like in Houston that year. They had this big meeting in Houston. And so this delegate from our region happened to be at church after this meeting and was like, hey, we're going to meet in this, whatever, the fellowship hall thing after church and kind of talk about what transpired in the meeting. And my wife was like, well, let's go check that out. See what went on in this big fancy meeting, right? We don't know. Anyway, so then this person was in there and they're like, yeah, there wasn't nothing big went on. We kind of voted on some stuff and nothing big, just normal church stuff. I'm like, okay, cool. If you want to know more, go to this website. And they like gave us this pamphlet. So we go home. I'm like, well, get on there and kind of, let's check it out. See, they didn't really give us much in that little meeting. So I want to see some more. What am I involved in? Right. And so I go on there and like this, 2 different delegates had gone there. And even though the church at that time, I'm technically not even sure where they stand now, but the Methodist church at that time had said, well, we're not for, homosexual marriage, same-sex marriage. We're not going to ordain homosexual marriage. 2 of the delegates, these are like top dogs in their area, had went across the street right afterwards, like on a lunch break or something, and married 2 of the other delegates that were there. It was like, I'm like, how did this happen? What? We're not for this, but we're doing it. I don't know. It didn't make no sense to me. And I told my wife at the time, I was like, that's I'm not into any of that stuff. I'm not into any of that. Yeah. So we started looking around and gravitated towards Baptist, and that's really pretty much what we've attended ever since. And it's it's been a full range as far as I think one of them was a Southern Baptist church, and then the rest of them have been Independent Baptist. And by Independent Baptist, there's a whole range within that, kind of like there is within everything, right? We went to a church in Stillwater where I kind of thought it was cool because like all the men wore suits, but like you can't wear. Oh, are you there?
I'm still here.
Okay, good. So all the women, basically, it wasn't an official thing, but it was very frowned upon to wear pants, right? And so my wife was like, man, I feel like I'm kind of getting ostracized in this whole deal because she's not a fan of wearing skirts and dresses all the time, right? So, but it was really strict on the dress code. But like I said, the preacher had even said several times, he's like, look, there's not a dress code in our church. It's just, this is the culture, right? And you know how it is. You get kind of, if you're in there, if you want to fit in, well, you need to kind of adapt. And anyway, so but I mean, I like the church. I think it's a solid church. It's just their dress code was a little strict. And then like you go over to somebody's house after church and they're like, oh yeah, we don't own a TV. And that happens more than once. And you're like, oh, really? Man, okay. Does anybody own a TV in this deal? But no, I actually, I mean, like I said, I really did enjoy that church, and I think it's a solid church. And I've been, like, the church we attend now is a lot more laid back now. Laid back as far as dress code wise, as far as hammering on the word of the Lord. That's what we're doing week in and week out. And they also, the church we attend now, it's independent, so they've actually kind of dropping the Baptist part of the name and going with Liberty Church Edmond is the name of it. And our pastors, they're also involved in current events, which I've been in churches, it's just expository preaching week in, week out. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But I also think it's a good idea to address events that come up. There's nothing there's nothing wrong with that either. Especially kind of, you got to shepherd your flock, be sure people are prepared for what's going on around them. Like right now, Israel's at war, right? It's kind of a big deal. Yeah. So it's good to be sure that your congregation kind of knows a little bit about what's going on over there. So anyway, so that's I guess a long trip to say that I attend a Baptist church, and I definitely gravitate towards their theology. Now, pretty much almost all my Christian life, and somebody says, oh, are you a Methodist? Are you a Lutheran? What are you? I always just say I'm a Christian, follower of Jesus. That's what I do. It's not like I'm super dogmatic with any set of beliefs. Let's read the word of God, see what it says, and let's apply it, Yep. I may be wrong. I've been wrong plenty of times before. I'm sure I'll be wrong again.
Same. Yeah. So, like, was there anybody in that tradition, or you're not even in the tradition, just in your life that kind of influenced you, just in the faith, or?
Well, there's, like I said, my parents were, like I said, we went to several Baptist churches over our whole time frame and growing up and everything. And then I had a real good friend of mine. You may remember him from Deer Creek, Benito Gonzalez. He was really still one of my best friends. And he'd been Baptist growing up and Baptist the whole time. And really he was and is still instrumental in keeping me as a strong Christian. And there was a time like that college time where I was way away from the Lord. I actually was a bad influence on his life, but now and afterwards, even through that, he was an example to me. Even at times he may have been, he probably thinks he's a bad example, but there was times there that he was still an example to me. And he knew by growing up and being more solid in his faith, he knew more about the Bible, where I could, talk to him about with different questions and things that I didn't understand. I had no idea. And it just really just having that example sitting there, staring me in the face all the time, basically, was instrumental in helping me eventually lead me to Christ, or me, going to Christ and give my life to Christ. But it's really helped I mean, I think that, and he was always be like, "Hey, yeah, you want to go to church? Want to come to church?" He would invite me. We would, that was kind of a prevalent deal, and the things we talked about often made sense to me. That his theology made sense to me, if that made sense. If that makes sense to
Oh
you.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love the Baptist tradition. The history and everything is awesome. And I definitely know a lot of solid believers in that sphere. So I would our church is essentially Baptist, uh,
Yeah.
charismatic. It's charismatic. It's in the Reformed tradition, so it's Calvinist leaning, but it's also just Baptist. They
Yeah.
baptize adult believers, so that's the
Right.
lowest common
Yes.
denominator of what. But
Yeah.
yeah, man, I've always appreciated even the non-charismatic, like, because I grew up, I grew up charismatic, and so, but I kind of appreciate a lot of the influences on either side of that. But so well, that's cool, man. Yeah, I'm super thankful for people in my life too that were just following the Lord. You know, I had a drop off, and then I came back, and that whole time, just people all around me that were just consistently following God, and that's huge. So
And I don't think, I think most of the time people probably don't even think about themselves as being a witness, but just living their
yeah,
life, like you say. I mean, that's one of the things that you realize now, I know that I realize now, because of, I know people that have told me about how I've influenced, or just the evidence. They'll be like, "Oh, I know you're a Christian," or they come to you with personal issues or whatever because they know you're a Christian. And it's, you don't, I mean, you're not like overtly, out there street preaching, and you know what I mean? But you're
yeah,
just living life. And it gets to the point where everybody's looking at you, really. You don't realize it, but if somebody knows that you're a Christian, they're waiting for you to trip up. They're watching you just for that aspect, if anything. Because, I mean, like, how many times does this happen in our society where you got this high level, highfalutin Christian person, super popular, and they have, some sort of immorality happen, and the world loves that. When they fall, they love it when they fall, and they're most of the time they're probably not doing anything that the rest of the world isn't doing themselves, but because they hold a Christian to a higher standard, and they're always watching. I guess that's my point, is that they're always watching.
yeah, definitely. So yeah, back to the Baptist thing. Is there, within your church at least, is there anything that uh, maybe has been taught or preached that you struggled with, and maybe either came to terms with it, or maybe just kind of decided that's not where you're at? Uh, Anything
Man, as
specific
far
like
as,
that?
not not a whole lot. I mean, as far as the current church that I'm at, not particularly. There there has been, let me think of a good example. There's sometimes, and I can see this sometimes too. Sometimes they'll get, almost, it's easy to do, to get kind of a little bit off in the weeds on political issues and hammer them to where sometimes you kind of go, okay, where are we at here? Are we focused on God? Are we focused on politics? But I mean, that's the way it seemed initially. But really, when you get down to it, I mean, it's so religion has been here, and used to be politics was kind of stayed in their lane, right? And politics says, well, this is ours now. You can't talk about it now. This is
Yeah.
ours. You know what I mean? I mean,
Oh
so
yeah.
there was, not too long ago, it would be no big deal to say, killing little babies in the womb, that's a religious issue. And now everybody's like, well, you can't talk about that. It's a political issue. Man, you can't talk about that in church. That's political. And it's like, it's okay. We've got little innocent human beings, and we're killing them. that's not a political issue. That's not even an issue, in my opinion. I know people do have issues with that. No, there's a whole side that says that's justified, and that's actually something that I used to think. Man, I remember it's been years ago now. The whole abortion issue. I could go for hours on that by itself, but there was a time where the argument that, oh well, what about rape and incest? Right? What about rape and incest? That's a purely emotional argument for one thing. But I was like, well, yeah, what about? I mean, that makes sense. Why would you want to force a girl to carry a baby that that when she has to think about being raped the whole time? Well, that doesn't make any sense. But then when you break it down, what is going on here? What's transpiring? Let's look at it. Let's break it down. There's a baby, and we're going to kill it. That's it.
That'll fix it.
Yeah.
You know?
How does that take away the rape or I don't know how that removes anything. I don't know how adding trauma to trauma negates the trauma. It doesn't. It doesn't. But that's my view on it, and I think it's the right view on it, of course. But
no, I'm with you,
that's
man.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I know this might sound stupid. We both grew up in the same area, so I can assume that you're probably more leaning to the right. But I don't know if you wanted to talk about that at all. Has that evolved or changed at all? Just study of the scriptures and things like that, or
yeah, somewhat. When there was a time when when I really didn't even think about politics at all. Just didn't even think about it. But I've always been registered as a Republican, just because my parents were registered as Republicans, right? That's how I became registered as a Republican. And then you're around a bunch of people that, lean to the right. And, like I said, I didn't even think about that a whole lot for a long time. But the more I grow as a Christian, the more it influences my worldview, right? That's the lens that I'm looking at the world in, is through the Bible, right? That's where everything's filtered through. At least I try to. And the more you see that, the more you see it align with one group over another group. Now, there's an awful lot of Republicans that are not conservative. An awful lot of them. Now, they'll tell you, they'll stand on a conservative platform and say they're for A, B, C, D, and then they just do whatever. They'll get in there and they'll put their finger to the wind and see where everything's going, and there's just no. I wish more of them would be like, no, this is where we're at. This is where I'm at. This is where we're doing, instead of just kind of being all nebulous and morph into every situation. But I mean, really, I went from not caring about politics really at all to, I'm probably about as far right as you could get right now. That's where I'm at. And I mean, quite frankly, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't understand or see how. I mean, I'd be glad to talk with somebody, but I don't understand or see how somebody who is a Christian could vote for a party that has a platform that likes killing babies and is, hates God, and in the name of progress, we're gonna be as regressive as we can. And so it's that's me. Like I said, now I tell you, I've had some great discussions and debates with people that are on that side of the aisle, if you will. But and I always think it's good, man. It's always good to discuss, if anything, I mean, even discuss things with non-Christians, because how do you know exactly how solid your position is until you're confronted with opposition, right? If you're confronted with the other side, then you can then you can, for one thing, you know the argument that they have, and you can know whether you have a counter or how solid you are in that, and maybe your position needs to change. Let's figure it out. There's so
Yeah.
much that could be, there's so much progress that could be made if we would just sit down and talk things out, rather than, well, this is my side and that's your side and we're sticking to our guns, both sides. And I don't know, it's just
Sure.
it's the way everything is in politics is just so messy and so jacked up right now. And there's never
Yeah.
seen so much division. There used to be so much of a middle ground, really. It used to be huge, and it just seems like there's not a lot anymore.
Yeah. No, back to what you were saying. Like, there's really no non-political issue anymore.
Right.
But yeah, and I think a lot of times, talking about conversations, like people feel like if they're gonna have a conversation, they have to win. I don't
Yes.
think that's the right, like,
Right,
have the
dude.
conversation, see where you're at, see where they're at. It's like
And
it's
that's
not gonna
so
hurt you if you feel like you lost
yes.
or whatever.
That's that's such a critical thing. And
That's why I had a Catholic
dude,
on. I'm just
yeah, yeah. Oh,
about
I
as
watched
Protestant
that.
as it gets.
Yeah, no, I watched that. No, it's a good conversation.
I enjoyed it. Linda's awesome.
Yes. And so going back to that though, that's a big deal. And man, dude, I struggle. I love to debate through I love the mental exercise of working through an argument and trying to persuade somebody to come around to my view. I love that. And that's, I mean, almost to a detriment, honestly.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, yeah, just like you said, it's almost like from the beginning, what do I have to do to get this person to say something, to back them into a corner so that I can walk away feeling like I've won? Right.
Yeah.
Whereas, at the end, in the big scheme of things, I don't have to convince them of anything. At the end, really, if anything, the proverbial pebble in their shoe, man, just something to where they walk away going, that was a good conversation. And that was, right, boy, Riley, at least he didn't blow up. He didn't do nothing. We had a nice civil conversation. Maybe there's something to this Christianity. You know what I mean? There's so many people that
Greg Kukul? Kukul? Is that his last name?
Yeah, I
Familiar with
think
him?
I may have heard him the pebble in the shoe thing.
Yeah, Pebble in the Shoe.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I've heard
yeah.
you mention Frank Turek too. So I don't
Oh
know.
man,
Have
dude,
you been much into apologetics?
I love Frank Turek, and he, of course, he has the guy that his name escapes me right now, that helped him write a couple of his books, the co-author. But yeah, man, dude, I love apologetics. So I think apologetics, and man, I was actually a relatively new Christian when I started coming across, but there's so many, like I said, at one time, abortion, the emotional argument seemed like that's a decent argument until you break it down and see what it actually is. You're like, that doesn't make any sense at all. And so that's what I love about apologetics is it's almost just like, let's take this argument and let's look at it. Let's actually break it down and look at it. And because, dude, today emotions run everything. It's so crazy. Emotions, that's how the world works, is emotion. How do you feel about that? Well, who cares how you feel? What is it? What is it? Let's get to the bottom. Now, feelings are very important, but the reality is you have to know, what is it? What are we talking about? What is we breaking? Let's break it down. And there's so many arguments that seem so good that, like Frank Turek, he calls it the roadrunner tactic, where basically you just use the argument on itself and see how it stands up. And so just like the whole deal, like, I did a podcast on that about truth. People say, "Damn, well, I mean, that may be true for you, but that's not true for me." Okay, well, is that true for you, but not true for me? Is that statement, or the whole, we had the COVID thing. Everybody said, trust the science. I sure hope we're not gearing back up for the whole COVID thing again. Seems like it, but we'll see. but trust the science. And it's like, well, okay, that's one thing to say, trust the science, but is the statement trust the science a scientific statement? No, it's not. You can't analyze that using the scientific method. So I mean, there's just so many things like that. And it really, apologetics, just it kind of transforms your way of thinking. If that makes sense. It just
Oh yeah.
it really, once you, it's almost, it's one of those deals, what do they say? Ignorance is bliss. Once you start kind of transforming your mind into that kind of thinking, there's just so many things that jump out at you that you're like, you just start noticing these contradictions everywhere. And it almost makes you wish you you didn't have to see them all the time.
Can I go back to just simplicity and yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you
Yeah,
just
for
help
sure.
me be not thinking about all this stuff now. But no, it's really apologetics. So I don't know how well of a good of a tool it is to evangelize. I think there is plenty of people that have come to Christ through apologetics. But I think it's where it really comes into play is it's such a faith strengthening tool that once you realize that I'm not just believing this stuff just because somebody told me to, or just because I feel this way. You're saying there's actual evidence here to
Mhm.
back up all this stuff. And so it just helps you become more rock solid on your foundations, knowing that, okay, this is real. And it gives you more courage, gives you more boldness, because when you have and can think through that stuff and kind of have those arguments in your corner to combat just the common things, the common attacks on Christianity, then it just helps you to have a backbone, have more confidence to know that, okay, well, yeah, I've heard this one before, I've got this, and also to just to not be on your heels the whole time in those kind of conversations and be going, oh, I don't know, I mean, I have no idea, I
Yeah.
just don't know. And so it just gives you that confidence to be able to stay in that conversation and continue that conversation.
No, I'm with you, man. I kind of started out with Ravi Zacharias, which of
Yeah.
course I don't know
Yeah.
if you heard about his,
Oh, I know. That's,
stuff that went down with him.
well, that goes
But
back to the everybody's watching deal,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, the stuff's still true. But
Yes, it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
then William Lane Craig was really helpful, and like Frank Turek, these are all like they're kind of all in the evidential sphere of
Hmm.
like apologetics, which is great. I mean, I don't knock any of it. But lately I've gotten into kind of a different branch, I guess, of it, which has been interesting. It's kind of what you're talking about, like turning arguments on their head. It's kind of like deconstructing the argument rather than here's the evidence for my position. It's like, well, your position, reduces knowledge itself to absurdity. So like, it's kind of interested in like flipping that over on itself and showing
Right.
how our unaided reason leads to absurdity if the starting point is not Christ. So it's been interesting to learn that. But Greg Bonson is a really big advocate for that.
See,
If you're ever
Frank
interested in looking
Turek's
him up.
second book, or I don't know if it's a second book, that his follow up to "I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist" was called "Stealing from God," and I love that book a lot better than that, because it kind of goes down that. Of course, it kind of follows those arguments of, well, you're arguing this, but you can't even argue that unless
Right.
you assume that God exists. You can't. There's no way that even is a reasonable deal. Yeah, yeah. There's and really, when you break it all down, without God, then none of this is possible. So
Yeah.
where you at?
Yeah. No, and I go through plenty of like phases of just like doubt and unbelief, and you know, and it is nice to have that to fall back on. It's like it's not faith and it's not grace, but it is common grace. It is something God's given us,
Yep.
to give us confidence. And it's not like the disciples didn't have that. They got to see Christ in the flesh. I mean,
Hmm.
that's something. So
Well, and
yeah.
you look at John the Baptist. I was thinking about this the other day. I actually, dude, this has just been recently, and I had this. I was just kind of down one day, and I was just like, "Is this is real, right? This is real." And then whether it be Holy Spirit, whatever, kind of put it in my mind, laid it on my heart. It's like, look, John the Baptist, he was getting ready to be executed. He was in jail. And he's like, hey, go ask Jesus if this is the real deal or not,
Yeah.
And Jesus is like, yeah, dude, this is a real deal, and this is the guy that Jesus said was, what was it, first or chief among all the prophets. This is like the greatest man. God says this is the greatest man that ever lived. And he's like, man, I don't know if this is real or not. So it's like, if he's struggling, well, yeah, we're going to struggle. I'm nowhere compared to John the Baptist, and yeah, I'm going to struggle. But I've got that example there written in the Word of God to reassure me that, look, dude, he struggled with it. And God said, yeah, this is real. We got that reassurance there.
Yeah, help my unbelief. I know that I've prayed that prayer a lot. Like, I believe, help my unbelief. But yeah, it really is. I love that whole world of, I love arguments, I love evidences, but I also like looking at the opposing side and saying, what does this offer? What, say this was true, like, what would this give me in terms of like hope or sustainability or, and it comes up short every time, and but
well,
that's cool.
What's interesting. So like if you when you watch debates between a Christian and an atheist, these guys, the Christian is solid in his belief. The atheist ain't budging either, right? They're up there. They're both hardcore in their sides. But this is actually something that got me, this is kind of a funny story here. This kind of got me, my mind kind of interested in just debate and sides of an argument, right? I was watching a movie. It's called Thank You for Smoking. That's the name of it. And so this main character, Aaron Eckhart's his name, or the actor. And he's like this spin doctor for big tobacco. It's his job to go in there and like spin the argument to make big tobacco look like, nah, they're the good guys, right? And so his son asked him one day, what do you do, Dad? And he's like, well, let me try to explain it to you. And he says, hey, son, he's like, okay, let's say, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? And his son's like, well, I like chocolate. And he's like, well, I like vanilla. Why do you like chocolate? He's like, well, chocolate's the best. And I think it's great. And everybody should like chocolate. And he goes, well, I like vanilla, but I think you should be free to choose chocolate too. Shouldn't we all have our own personal choice and be able to just do our own thing? Isn't that better? And his son goes, well, you didn't convince me to like vanilla. And he goes, I'm not convincing you. I'm convincing everybody else. And I'm like, that's the role of like those debates up there. The atheist isn't trying to convince the Christian. The Christian really isn't trying to convince the atheist, although hopefully they do. But hopefully everybody sitting back watching can go, yes, that Christian makes sense, and the atheist is really not holding a lot of water right now.
Definitely. No, I've benefited from debates a lot. Like I mean, I've so many hours of debates, but yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. Lost my train of thought.
Probably threw you off with the chocolate and vanilla ice cream.
Oh no, you're good. Did you see Frank Turek? I think the biggest debate he ever did was with Christopher Hitchens.
I've watched bits and pieces. I think I've actually probably watched the whole thing before, but definitely bits and pieces. And
good one to watch. That guy, he talks about how like you just want to believe him because he sounds British, just has that.
Yeah, exactly. He sounds authoritative, right? He's got a British accent. That's what you got to do to sound like you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, I love I could talk about apologetics and all my dead heroes and all that forever, but yeah, that's a lot of fun. Yeah, I guess I don't want to keep you all night, but the next question I had for you was what, just like your personal walk with the Lord, what does that look like, and how does that look like having a family and with your daughters and stuff like that?
Man, there's so much so there's one thing. So basically, you grow up, you think you know what love is, right? You think you know what love is. And you get married, you fall in love with a woman. I fell in love with Courtney. She's awesome, right? And man, dude, marriage is a struggle. Don't get me wrong. Marriage is work. It's work. And then, but you think you know what love is there, and then you have these kids that come along. Man, I remember the first time, man, we were in the hospital and hearing Cadence cry, man, dude, that blew me away. That just blew me away. I was like, wow, I thought I knew what love was. That's, it's just it's like a completely different level. Yeah, I love my wife, but there's just a completely different level when you got this kid that you're responsible for. And actually, when we were in the hospital there, it was that first night. So my wife had a C-section, so she wasn't able to really tend to the baby very much. And so I was doing a lot of it, and they had me in this little like fold out camping cot in the room. And I'm like, this is miserable. And I didn't get no sleep. I'm trying to take care of this baby. And I sat there. I told my, it was a good 2 years before I told my wife this, but that first night I was sitting there and this kid was crying. Like I said, I just told you that this is amazing how much love I felt right then. But that night I was like, man, we messed up. This is, what am I, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't sleep. I got this kid that I don't know what I'm doing. I'm way in over my head, right? I don't know. But then, and you got that responsibility, right? You got a kid now. This is a human life that you're responsible, in part, in conjunction with my wife to help grow. And then you start thinking about, are they going to be a Christian? Are they? I find myself, or I have found myself over the years saying, I wish the Lord would hurry up and return before the age of innocence is over for these little girls, so then I can know it guaranteed. You know what I mean? I know it. I know they're in. But it's just, it's also one of those deals where I want to build a foundation, and I think we're doing an awesome job, because these kids, both of them, even Cambridge, she's only 3. Well, she's going to be 4 in December. They know so much more than I knew at their age. They know so much more. And by having that foundation, honestly, there was a time in my life where you hear the argument of, oh, you're just trying to indoctrinate them kids. They're going to believe because you're just indoctrinating them. It's like, well, if you don't indoctrinate them, somebody else is going to be indoctrinating them with something else.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's everybody is vying for the soul of these little kids. I'm their dad. I'm going to be putting up a fight for it. You know what I mean? And so that responsibility has done a lot of things for me. It's helped me when I look at them and know that I want to be able to answer their questions. They're going to have questions. They already have had questions. They're going to have questions, and the questions are going to get harder and harder and harder. And I want to be prepared. I don't want to be going, I don't know, why don't you look on YouTube and see what you can find? Yeah. You know what I mean? See, or go ask your teacher. Now, I mean, we do have them in a Christian school, but if we had them in a whatever, or, you don't want to they're going to get the answers somewhere, and you might as well give them a answer that's filtered through a biblical worldview. And when they get older, if they want to stay, they can stay. If they want to go, they can go. But I don't want to get to a point and go, I wonder if I could have done more to build that foundation. You know what I mean? I don't want to have that question lingering. Could I have done more? Did I do everything that I could to be sure that my daughters grew up in a Christian household and learned Christian teaching? It's really, I mean, this has helped me to develop to a point where there's days that, whether this is the right outlook on the world or not, I don't know, but there's days when I struggle with, if something is not about Christ, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I go through days like that where I'm like, if this isn't about God, I don't care. It's just that, there's that struggle with, I don't want to be so heavenly minded that I don't care about worldly things, and I don't want to be so worldly minded that I don't care about heavenly things, right? There's a balance there. And sometimes, man, just thinking about that, especially those girls, it gets me way up on I don't really care what else is going on in this life as long as we're pouring biblical knowledge into these girls and trying to give them the best example we can. Of course, I fall short constantly on that end of it, but I want to give them the best example and the best, give them the best, I don't know what you want to call it, just the best chance out there in the world. Like I said earlier, we went 10 years without having kids. During those 10 years, there was plenty, we had conversations. And a lot of those conversations were, look at this world. Do we want to raise a child in this world? Just look, this world chews people up and spits them out, man. This is a rough world. It's going nuts. And that was a long time ago, before the world is as nuts as it is now. But we kind of come to a point where we said, people are going to be raising kids. People are going to be throwing kids out there. What if we have a kid or two kids or more, who knows, that somebody's got to be putting good kids out there that can influence other people. What if you got somebody that doesn't care putting kids out there that are just kind of just going with the flow? What if somebody's got to be countering that? If you can raise a good child, a Christian child, and get them out there, maybe they can bring some of them lost kids to heaven with them. You know what I mean? That's you got to fight the culture somehow. And that's one way to make. Our pastor said that before. He said the easiest way to grow the church is to have babies, right?
Heck yeah.
And so, I mean, yeah, that's one way to do it, is to multiply. That's biblical, and plus, if you can keep them a good foundation and keep them Christian and have that there, then you're putting more Christians out there. So, it's man, having kids it's always tough, but it's always rewarding. I mean, it just is. You're not always thinking about, yes, I think about myself, but more often than not, I'm thinking about what can we do for these girls? What is going to shape their world? And that's what I pour it into them, try to anyway.
Yeah. No, so my daughter's almost two. And we've had the same conversations. Like, man, is this a good idea? Like,
dude,
it's crazy out there. Like, I'm with you, man.
It's nuts out there. Yeah.
But I mean, look at history, and it was always crazy. There was always, we could be in a time where we're in the United States getting killed for our faith. Like
right.
There's always been craziness. There's always been like sin nature, and so we kind of just came to the same conclusion. Like, I think it's a good thing. God advocates for this thing, so like it's it's worthy of the effort. It's worthy of the risk. It's worthy of all of that. So we're really early, but we're actually having another baby coming in December. So
congratulations.
It's really important to emphasize that, because I think people do live in fear, and they're like, I don't want to have kids. It's too crazy out there. But in reality, it's like, that's just life, and that's how the species is propagated. So
yeah, if you don't have kids, we're all going to die off.
Yeah. So pretty important. But yeah, man. So like, what about personally? Like, I know I struggle with, what do I do in my personal time, and prayer or scripture or whatever. What does that look like for you? I mean, how do you struggle in that?
Dude, and I do struggle. So my faith journey, I would love to sit here and say, this is the normal faith journey. My faith journey is like on cloud 9 all the time, right? That would be awesome if I could say that, but I am not. I am like this all the time. It goes from one day of man, I just felt great all day. I was in the Word, and I mean, so I'm in this, like last year I did this Bible in 6 months, reading it through. And this year I did, which that was, and it went super fast. You don't realize how, when you put it in 6 months, how quickly it goes by. And so this year, doing Bible in a year. And so like we're in Matthew right now. And, so last year, my youngest brother, Randon, he went through that with me. I was like, hey, my church is kind of doing this deal. You want to read it? He's like, yeah, cool. Sounds good. And then this year we're doing it too. And so having, like, I'll text him all the time, about different things that jump out at me from the scriptures, and he'll mention stuff that jumps out at him. And there's just, I think it's super critical to have another Christian that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can discuss things with, because it helps you grow so much, and it helps you see things in a completely different way. Not only that, but I mean, you also, when you're reading through the scriptures, then you're almost looking for, what can I really get out of this? You know what I mean? Instead of just, I'm putting in my time, it's good to try to see what you can glean out of the scriptures that can apply. Now, not everything has an application. There's plenty of stuff that don't, and there's plenty of stuff that, whatever application I come up with, is probably way off from what was intended. But I think it's good to be going through it and think about those sorts of things. And as far as prayer, I go through times when, like, honestly, these days I try to pray as much as I can. Like, almost like, I heard this the other day. I actually worked this into the next couple podcasts that I've got coming out. But I heard that it was pray without ceasing, because the enemy prays without ceasing. Preys, right? So, and I mean, that's biblical. He's, and we are in a spiritual war, and that's the thing. It's a complete, almost, I don't know what you want to call it, a completely, paradigm shift when you realize that we're not really against progressives. We're not really against the terrorists. We're not really against, ultimately we want all those people to come to heaven with us, right? That's at the end of the day, that's what we all want. That's our goal, is to try to get these people to heaven. But our battle, it's a spiritual battle. It's all spiritual, 100%. No matter if, hey man, I stubbed my toe this morning. Well, you're in a spiritual battle. Did I cuss? Did I not cuss? Did I, you know what I mean? It's, everything is a spiritual battle. It just 100%. And it's just, I don't know. It's just, yeah. So prayer is huge. I find myself, there's times, I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, and I just feel like, man, I just need to go pray somewhere. And so go to the living room, get on my knees and pray, and just, even if you don't even got to say anything, sometimes you're just like, man, I'm just in such a bad spot right now. Why am I thinking about some of this stuff? I don't understand it. But it's not like I'm not getting an audible answer or anything, but it's just, I'm not. And that's another thing. Growing up, I remember, you gather around the Thanksgiving meal. Oh, who's going to say the prayer? Well, I hope nobody asks me to say the prayer. It's, you get that shyness or whatever. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to say a prayer, how to sound official. Prayer is just a conversation with God. That's all it is. You're just talking to God. And really, really, when you break it down to that, it's just like, okay, yeah, you want me to say a prayer? Yeah, whatever. I've never heard anybody say a prayer in a public setting and then have a bunch of people go, well, that was an awful prayer. Who asked that guy? It's you're just talking to God. Everybody's like, oh, thank goodness they asked that guy and not me, and so you got that. And something that I've started recently, which is something I'd never done before. I'm talking recently, within the last 6 months, is fasting. I'd never done that before. I'd never done that. And because it was just like, oh, fasting, what is, I don't have sackcloth and ashes. I don't know what I'm doing there. And so but when you look at it, and it's just it's not even an outward expression like baptism is. It's just you and God. I'm not like beating myself with a whip or chains or anything. It's just me. Anytime my stomach growls or I'm tempted, a little bit of hunger here or there, then I'm okay. That's a reminder. I'm going to be praying to God. I'm going to talk to God. That's a conscious reminder for me to fellowship with the Lord during that day. And I'm not talking like I'm going a week without food and water. I'm just talking about, eating supper one night and then not eating until supper the next night. You know what I mean? It's doable, but it's enough to make you go, okay, this is my focus. This is my focus. And so I wouldn't say it's like transformative or anything, but it's definitely another tool to have for sure to help you say, hey, man, I remember I was kind of feeling like, oh, man, I feel like I'm kind of not near the Lord right now. Oh, it's been a couple weeks since I've fasted. That, and I was like, well, okay, let me fast. Yeah. Let's do it. It's not like it's a magic trick or anything, but it's just a way to get back in line and help you get back in line with God.
Definitely. No, I've heard someone talk about that, like it breaks down your pride. And I struggle to fast. Like, I have not fasted. I've done it several times in my life, but I haven't done it for several years. I haven't done it. I want to. It's like you're like, okay, when am I going to do it? And then you decide to do it, and then something happens, and you're like, oh, I can't do it today. That's been me for like months and months.
Yeah.
So I know it's a good thing. Like, I know it's something I do desire to do. Maybe I just need to find somebody to say, hey, I'm doing this. Hold me accountable. But
so you say that, it's really, dude. Randon, I was like, I'm going to start this fasting deal. You want to do it? And he's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And then, of course, like the first time I was like, I'm fasting today. He's like, no, I already had a donut, man. But at least having that there. Yeah, but at least having that there, it's like, a little bit of accountability, I think, helps too, for sure. Even if it's just like a text, even if it's just like a text message or something like, hey, I'm fasting today. Okay, cool. Yeah, me too. Let me know how it goes.
Yeah. No, it does seem like it's still something we should do, and it's still
right. Jesus said when you fast. He didn't say if you fast. Yeah. Jesus said exactly. When you fast. So, and that was really kind of the straw that broke my back, was just reading that and going, yeah, sure enough. I guess I should probably do that, because it seemed like, oh, that's just so old timey. What? People don't fast anymore. Do people really do that? But yeah, they do it.
Fast food. No,
yeah, there you go. Yeah, fast food.
Well, yeah, man. That's good stuff. I've appreciated hearing your thoughts, and kind of toward the end here. But are there any future goals, maybe either for your family, for you, maybe for your business, or anything like that you're looking toward? Maybe for the podcast. Any future goals with that, or?
Yeah. So family wise, who knows what the future entails with everything, but definitely I love how we're growing in the Lord. I love how we're getting closer to God. And my vision is for us to keep growing. And man, dude, I jack things up all the time. I mess up plenty of times, and I'll own it. But yeah, just to keep growing in the Lord there. As far as the podcast, I just want to keep growing it. There's all these, if you look at like how to grow a podcast and do all this stuff, it's just consistency, right? And there's been several times that I'm like, man, I didn't get a podcast in. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. And sometimes I kind of beat myself up, almost to the point where you're like, well, maybe I should just give up the podcast deal. But then you realize, like, I was talking to this a brother in Christ the other day, and I was kind of debating on, should I continue with apologetics? Should I not? Is it being received? Is it being not? But really, it's this stuff, when like what you're doing, those videos are going to be out there forever. And sometimes it's tempting to sit there and go, man, I only had like 2 people watch this thing, and I know I was one of them. It's like, well, maybe is this worth it? Is it not? But then you never know. I mean, you never know what happens if you get to heaven and you're walking around and somebody comes and says, "Hey, Caleb, I saw your podcast this one time and it really made me start thinking," and you're like, "When did you see that?" "Oh, well, where are you from?" "Oh, I'm from Pakistan," or who knows? You know what I mean?
think that'd be
There's
cool.
no telling there's so much evil on the internet. Might as well put some good out there and try to make a dent in it, right? So here's something the other day. It was actually on another podcast that I heard this. This guy was talking about how in the end times, there's in the tribulation, you got all this stuff happens, and there's like a third of these people die, and half of the next people die, and you got all this stuff, and you think, oh, that's so many millions and billions of people that are going to be dying. It's just going to be nuts. Well, those are just percentages, right? That's not numbers. So we have an opportunity right now to make a dent in that. You know what I mean? So it's not saying, the Bible's not saying X number of people are going to die. It's saying a percentage of these people that are there are going to die. Well, let's make a dent in it.
Yep.
You've got a podcast. I've got a podcast. We live in a day and age where anybody that's got a microphone or a phone or whatever, everybody's got a smartphone. The government gave away free smartphones all the time. So everybody's got one. You might as well press record and put some stuff out there. So many people are too shy about having, standing up in front of talking in front of people. And really, if you were to go to a church and give your testimony, then you're going to be impacting 50, 100, few hundred people. Whereas here you've got the opportunity to impact millions of people. You really do. And so it may seem like we're just having a conversation, and we are, but this conversation can be viewed over who knows how many years by who knows how many people. And they can say, man, Caleb and Riley really had a good conversation. That's really kind of opened my eyes on some stuff. There's hopefully we get to heaven and somebody comes up and says, dude, I saw your podcast. It changed my life. That'd be great. And ultimately it's not like I'm going to be saying, oh, great, my podcast changed. It's just, all we're doing is talking about biblical truth and just talking about the Bible, right? It's kind of like when you're in an argument with somebody that doesn't believe in the Bible and you bring up a Bible verse or a Bible concept and they've got a problem with it. And it's like, okay, well, it doesn't hurt me at all that you've got a problem with this because I'm just telling you what God says about this issue. So you don't got a problem with me, you got a problem with God. You know what I mean? So hopefully my podcast, hopefully your podcast, hopefully everybody's podcast, man. That's a good thing. Is so when you start a podcast, it's like, oh, well, there's all the other people got podcasts too. There's already Christian podcasts out there. Well, there's not your competition. There's no competition in the podcast market. Yeah, Joe Rogan's got the number one podcast out there. Well, okay, he's number one. So you and me, we're below that somewhere. You know what I mean? Oh, well, we're on the list. We're in the game.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. Getting the word out. That's the name of the game, is getting the word out.
No, I love having these conversations, and man, you think you'll ever have any skeptics or anything like that on your show? Or are you gonna keep?
I don't know about that. I don't know if I'm ready for that, dude.
Yeah. I hope to. I don't know if anyone would, but I think it'd be fun. Just
I think it would be fun. I don't know if I'm humble enough to say, man, I might come out of there looking like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But hopefully I get to that point. I really want to have, like your format's all about having guests, and I think that's awesome. And I've yet to have a guest. I want to start doing that, honestly, because I think it just brings so much instead of just my view, being out there, which I enjoy doing that too. But I think bringing on a guest and starting that would be awesome too. I think that would be really getting my first guest on the podcast and having time to carve out and actually do that would be a big step. And I think would be it. And see, you're inspiring me. You're inspiring me right now.
Good. Well, yeah, man. Last question I had is that I ask everybody is, what content, or it could be books, podcasts, video, anything that's kind of you've been meditating on or has made you think, and maybe encourage the people out there listening, a giant audience.
Yeah, so of course, like the daily Bible reading is huge, just to be in the Word every day. But also, like I'm reading through C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity right now. I'm trying to work through that, and I've got a couple other books that my pastor kind of said, "Hey, this is books you need to really read." And like one of them is More Than a Carpenter by I can't his name escapes me right now. If you look up
Josh McDowell.
Josh McDowell, yeah, More Than a Carpenter, Josh McDowell, and then there's another one called the Our Father. I think it's Our Father Abraham. It's Jewish Roots of Christianity. It's kind of like
Okay.
look. I don't remember the author of that one, but it's I haven't even gotten into it yet. But it's looking at the how first century Jews would read the Bible and how they would view Christianity and what they would get out of it, because that was the audience, the letters were written to and all that, trying to take all that from a Jewish perspective. And I think that's going to be really interesting once I get into that. But also, like podcasts I listen to on a daily basis, there's this one called The Bible Guys. It's two dudes out of Michigan, and they're two pastors, and they don't get down into things. They don't go deep, which I like going deep, but they don't go deep. But they cover a lot of issues and a lot of things, and they do it in just a fun, relaxed way. And it's really helps lighten up everything and helps you get some more Bible reading in there. And then Jan Markell, she's more of a end times content, and it's called Understanding the Times. And so there's a lot of end times prophecy stuff that goes on there, and it's just because of the times we live in, it's just super interesting. And it's easy to get focused in on all that stuff, but it's just also cool to have the different conversations and go, yeah, I can see where that's going on here and that's going on there, and what I like about it is, so it's super easy to go, this is such a scary time, right? It'd be easy to do that, but it's also such an exciting time. And if we're living in biblical, you think, oh, living in biblical times. Well, imagine if you could be in that. Well, we're living in biblical times. We're living in the world, so we're living in biblical times. And it's just everything that's unfolding right now. It's like, wow, that's just crazy. Everything's on warp drive or something. But that's really kind of the things that I take in. Of course, watching YouTube content, and like I said, I saw your conversation with the Catholic. It's interesting to see everybody's points of view and to know and to constantly analyze your worldview and where you stand on issues. It's there's, like I said, I've been wrong before. I'll probably be wrong again. Let's see where I shake out.
Yeah, for sure.
I know where I stand on salvational issues. So, but there's a lot of things that aren't salvational issues. That there's a lot of excellent arguments on both sides of almost anything that's especially non-salvational.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Man, dude, thanks for having me.
An hour and 15 minutes with me. It's awesome.
Yeah,
I honestly keep hoping these get longer, like progressively. I'm always afraid to keep people 3 hours, but
yeah, no, it's been great, dude. It's been great.
Yeah, man. I look forward to seeing what else you put out. If you don't mind, stay on for a little bit, and I'm gonna stop the recording.
Yeah,
guys, this is Riley Lowe, Righteous Ruckus. You can see him there. Just type that in on YouTube, and he'll pop up. He's got some good stuff on there. So
yeah.
Thanks for coming, man. Appreciate it.